Representative David Simpson, welcome to Come and Talk It, sir.
Great to be with you.
Awesome. So let's start off a little bit about how do you think the session went, this year?
It's probably 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. I'm grateful we passed open license carry. We passed a budget that was better than previous, though I still opposed it. It had $1 billion of corporate welfare still in it, despite the Republicans' boast to reduce that substantially. And it still increased at a rate of 12% in general revenue spending, which is an alarming rate.
Okay. And this year we were able to get open carry passed. So how do you think about licensed open carry and what we actually got out of that?
Well, I think it's a big step forward. I'm grateful that it did pass. I think my first session here, George Lavender wanted to move in that direction. Hopefully he'll be back at some point. But times have changed, and I was really glad to see it. Now, I wish we could have gone farther. I don't think the government has a place in licensing self-defense. I think that's a God-given right, whether it be with your fists or whether it be with a gun or whether it be a knife, to defend yourself against a wrongdoer, someone who's going to harm you. The government shouldn't have to license that. But we do, and it's at least good now that if someone does desire to wear a pistol or openly, they can. And as long as you're not harming your neighbor, the
Correct.
government shouldn't be involved.
Now, and with that said, constitutional carry, since we were not able to get that, past this session, what are your thoughts about constitutional carry and what about next session?
I hope we can do it next session. Probably going to need a change in leadership to do that. But I do think the next 2 years will give people an opportunity to realize, like with concealed carry, we're not going to fall off the edge of a cliff. I think that sometimes the perception, I would like to see us track the people who should not have a gun and not have any licensing mechanism for self-defense. And I think that's what unconstitutional carry is, and I do support that effort. I'm disappointed Representative Stickland's bill only got referred very late. That was deliberate and unfortunate. But I do think the time is coming when we can pass constitutional carry.
All right. And then what about concealed carry on campus? How do you feel, what was proposed versus what we actually received from that bill?
Well, I think, I carried that bill really my first session, and it is complicated in the sense that it's a difficult environment and a lot of crazy things going on college campuses. People are really free from their parents really for the first time, but that ought to make it all the more a reason for responsible citizens to be able to defend themselves. And now you can not only be armed while you're walking across campus and you're having a picnic or something, but you don't have to go back to your car now, but you can carry your weapon inside the building. I'm not familiar with all the details, so I'm not ready to speak to that right now. But I think it's a good move forward.
Awesome. Now, how about some of the other bills that you put out there that you actually authored? How do you feel that, how those bills went, and were you able to get what you asked for this session?
Well, I filed a bill to deal with an egregious retroactive property tax when you simply change the use of agricultural land and you want to develop it. You have to pay 5 years of back taxes at the higher rate, the developed rate, based on a fictitious use of your property. It's retroactive. It's just egregious. It's wrong. Regrettably, the chairman of that committee just would not bring it to a vote. I had about 75 co-authors, for
wow.
that legislation, it would have passed the House. That's unfortunate. I had another bill to deal with civil asset forfeiture that would have basically repealed those provisions and required a conviction before taking someone's cash or their property if they were accused of a crime. Right now, all you have to do is think that a 51% chance that that cash or that car or those dogs or whatever had to do with drugs or some other.
And so that's when someone's driving, for an example, through Texas, and they get stopped by law enforcement.
That's right. You just drive too long in the left-hand lane. They pull you over. They ask you why, and they ask you if they have a large amount of cash. And if you do, you may well be in trouble. And so, they just need a preponderance of the evidence to take it. And then you have to prove that you gained it legitimately.
Wow. That's
just wrong. We should require a conviction prior to taking someone's property. And that's what my bill would have done. Had a lot of bipartisan support on that bill too, but the chairman of that committee refused to bring it to a vote.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, I really want to thank you, Representative Simpson, for, being the people's champion. You're actually that person that stands up for liberty. It's very few representatives that we have that we can actually say that for. And I think you're definitely one of our champions. And I really appreciate all the work you've done this session.
Well, I'm very grateful to serve Texas and the constituents in East Texas. And, God made us free. He made us responsible. And a responsible use of freedom is what has made this country and Texas great. And I hope that we are taking steps to return to that perspective instead of government taking care of you from the cradle to the grave. We are made to be free, not slaves, not robots, but free and independent, responsible people. And that's what Texans should be and have been. And I trust we'll restore that here once again.
And I have to mention marijuana, because if we don't talk guns and marijuana, someone's going to get upset with me. So also, there was some, legislation toward marijuana legalizing a little bit. How do you feel that Texas? Do you think we're actually going to eventually go that route to legalize?
Well, I think it's the right thing to do as long as you don't harm your neighbor. It's a plant that God made. 1 Timothy 4:4 says, everything God made is good, and nothing is to be refused if it can be received with thanksgiving. I do not advocate for the irresponsible use of marijuana or any substance, alcohol or food, but just because someone can use it excessively or immoderately doesn't mean we should criminalize it. If they are addicted to something, whether it be alcohol, if they're not harming their neighbor, we should seek to get them help. We should befriend them, find out why they're hurting, give them the gospel, take them to church, but don't put them in prison. And there are people, and the reason why I brought that bill forward is because irresponsible people, regardless of the prohibition right now, are obtaining the plant. You can get it on most public school campuses within an hour. But the people who can use it responsibly to treat epilepsy, PTSD, cancer, acute or chronic pain, they're faced with moving out of state, uprooting their families, losing their businesses, losing their friends, or becoming criminals. And it's just wrong. They shouldn't have to make that choice. I do hope we've made some small steps with the argument. It's not so stigmatized to talk about it anymore. But there's more to do. And I hope we can have more medical freedom here in Texas very soon.
Awesome. Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, State Representative David Simpson, the People's Champion. And we'll be right back after this. You're listening to Come and Talk It.